P1.
And Mayor, before we begin this presentation regarding the consent decree with EPA, I just want to make sure that we do have an executive session written on here in the case that any of the members of the council do wish to go into executive session for last-minute discussions on this. We don't have to, but we just put it on there to give council that privilege.
Right. I will definitely offer that option up to the council members. I will say that my 4 years on city council and about 2.5 years now as mayor, I have been in executive sessions on the potential litigation that we were facing and have been facing from the federal government and the EPA. We have been informed to an extensive amount of information over those years. So I don't feel the need, but if y'all would like to, do y'all feel the need?
No, sir.
I'm fine.
Okay, so we'll go ahead, Mr. City Manager, with the presentation.
All right, thank you.
Lisa, go ahead.
Mayor, Council, good morning. As you know, the City of Tyler, like every other city that owns a wastewater collection system, experiences discharges from that system. And in 2009, the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, contacted us to start discussions on how we would remedy that situation. So we began several years worth of negotiations to get to the point where we're at. We have a negotiated agreement. I'd like to present some information about that agreement to you this morning, and then afterwards request that you approve the Tyler Water Utilities to enter into that agreement with the EPA. So having said that, the agreement is called a consent decree, and again, I'd like to reiterate that this consent decree is only applicable to the wastewater collection system. That would be the actual sewer mains, the manholes, and the lift stations that are spread throughout the city. It is not applicable to the wastewater treatment plants, and it is not applicable to the water system, to the potable water system. So, having said that, to give you some background on where we're at, as you know, the City of Tyler back in 1917 purchased a private sewer company called, ironically enough, the Tyler Sewer Company, which got us about 12 miles of sewer mains in sizes ranging from 4 to 10 inches in diameter. Today, the City of Tyler owns and operates over 690 miles of sewer mains, ranging in sizes from 6 inches to 54 inches in diameter. In addition, we have well over 9,000 manholes, and we have 22 sewage lift stations, which we refer to as lift stations. We estimate that over 2/3 of the system, about 476 miles of this system, is more than 30 years old, and almost half of that is well over 50 years old. So given the age of the system, you can expect to see leaking pipes, broken pipes, leaks in manholes. In addition, due to the growth in the city, you could expect there might be some areas of the system that's no longer sized adequately to carry the wastewater flows that you would expect to see in that area. And then, of course, unrelated to the age or necessarily the growth, you can also expect blockages in your sewer mains. And typically that, at least especially in Tyler, that's from grease, roots, and other types of debris. Again, that's about 65% of the blockages that we here in Tyler see in our sewer system, resulting in these overflows. So the result of that is that from January 1, 2005 to September 30th of this year, we have reported 577 sanitary sewer overflows to the TCEQ. That's about an average of 48 per year. And of course, that would be, again, the reason why the EPA contacted us. So what we're looking at is the fact that we have pipes, we have manholes, we have pumps out in the system that may need to be repaired They may need to be replaced in order to reduce or eliminate any future releases of this untreated wastewater. So, as I mentioned, the EPA contacted us in 2009 to talk about these SSOs going back to 2005. So since that time, we've been negotiating with the EPA to develop this agreement that's known as a consent decree. It's going to address our aging infrastructure and potential capacity issues and how to deal with the discharges that we're seeing. What they're going to require is that we develop and implement what they call a capacity management, operation, and maintenance program that we call CMOM. And this program is going to be fully implemented over the next 10 years. So what this CMOM is it's a framework. It's a program that's going to provide a framework for us to do a comprehensive review of our wastewater collection system and allow us to better enhance our current operation and maintenance practices so that we can better manage and operate our wastewater system, so that we can identify areas in the collection system with these potential capacity constraints, and that we better respond to the unauthorized discharges that we do have. The particular components of the CMOM program, there are multiple components. The first is system cleaning. And again, I want to stress that the components that are being mandated by this CMOM program under the consent decree are not things that we're not already doing. The EPA has told us that we are currently doing most of the bits and pieces of this program, but really this CMOM is going to be able to really make it a cohesive and comprehensive program for us. So system cleaning, that's something that we already do. What we're going to be required to do under the program, though, is to clean every single pipe in the system, all 690 plus miles, a minimum of once over the next 10 years. And then once we get through this 10-year period, then of course it's intended to be an ongoing program so that we will maintain this aggressive cleaning schedule so that we're not having these blockages due to grease and roots and debris. They want us to identify pipe segments that may need more frequent cleaning. Again, that's a program that we already have. We have what we call a hotspot cleaning program where we identify areas that need cleaning more frequently. We have a list of areas that we clean on a quarterly basis. We have a list that we clean twice a year. We have a really long list of areas that we clean every single year. And then, again, as I mentioned, we're also going to be developing these procedures to ensure that we're making this an ongoing program so that we're continually cleaning on a really aggressive basis even after this 10-year period is up, so that we're going forward doing a really good job of cleaning our system. The next component of the CMOM is condition assessments. And that goes back to the aging infrastructure. We're going to be doing TV inspections and or a combination of smoke testing of all 690 miles of the sewer mains so that we'll be identifying any areas with, you know, broken, cracked pipes, leaking pipes, what have you. Same on the manholes, doing either TV inspections or visually, you know, popping the manhole lids and doing visual inspections, taking photographs of all 9,000 manholes, doing the same type of visual inspections and operational inspections of the 22 lift station pumps, and then developing, all of those assessments are going to give us an ability to rank the types of deficiencies that we find and the certain problems that rank at a certain level. We'll be developing plans to either repair or replace those damaged pipes, manholes, or pumps. And then capacity assessments, again, another component. That's to address, again, potentially undersized pipes. So The City of Tyler has a computer model. We've had a computer model since about 2010. The EPA didn't necessarily agree with the methodology that we used to develop that model, so they are requiring us to update the existing model using some other specific criteria. But once we get the model updated using that criteria, we'll be assessing the system to identify potential capacity constraints. We'll be looking at both existing and future wastewater flows under both dry and wet weather conditions, and that will tell us these potential capacity constraints. And again, that gives us the opportunity to then go and further investigate those potential capacity constraints to identify the areas that are real, actual capacity constraints, and then those are the areas that we will develop the plans to replace the undersized pipes so that we're no longer having the capacity issues. Then finally, we'll be updating our procedures. We'll be developing new procedures and then updating existing procedures to address any deficiencies that we have just on an operational standpoint for routine and preventive maintenance, controlling grease and roots in the system, addressing employee training, and then how we actually respond to these sewer overflows. And all of those procedures are going to result in an actual written CMOM manual, which is then going to be our basically guide for how we're going to operate the system from here on out. Again, I've mentioned that this consent decree is going to cover the next 10 years. So we've got a time frame for how we're going to get through all of these required components. Immediately, we'll need to start working on this hydraulic model. We'll have 3.5 years after the effective date of the consent decree, and right now we're estimating that's going to be sometime in the spring of next year. We're anticipating about the beginning of March. So 3.5 years after that effective date, we'll have the model updated and identifying those real capacity constraints. And then from that point through the end of the 10-year period, we'll be actually addressing those capacity constraints in the way of capital improvement projects. Then the same for the lift stations, the force mains, the gravity mains, and the manholes. We'll be doing those visual inspections, the TV inspections. We'll be identifying deficiencies and then developing programs that we'll have to complete over these certain time periods so that we get capital projects out and done to either repair or replace those particular items. And then, as I mentioned, we'll have the 10 years to clean the entire system, and within 1 year after the effective date, we'll have that written CMOM manual developed and implemented. As a part of the consent decree, we will be paying fines. We're paying a $281,500 fine to the EPA as well as to the TCEQ. And then we'll be paying an additional $30,000 fine to the Texas Attorney General. As for the cost of the improvements that are going to be needed, right now we really don't have any way of knowing the full extent of the improvements that we're going to be looking at over the next 10 years until we get the condition assessments complete, until we get the model updated and go through the process of assessing the capacity constraints. So we just really don't have any way of knowing the full extent of the capital projects we're going to be needing to do over the next 10 years. Having said that, like I said, we do actually have an existing model that had addressed some areas that we believe had capacity constraints, and those projects have been on our capital improvements program, our 10-year forecast, for many years. That's the $28.5 million that we've had and have been forecasting out. Currently, those projects are on hold until we can get the current model updated so that we can verify that those are still projects that we're going to be doing and moving forward with. So we've been, obviously negotiating with the EPA for many years now. So we have been gearing up and ramping up to get to this point. In May of this year, we bought some additional camera equipment that is going to work in harmony with the other equipment that we already have. We have 2 Vector trucks, which are the vacuum trucks. That's what sucks the nasty stuff out of your sewer pipes. We have 2 water rigs and 2 rod trucks that clean, mechanically clean the pipes. And we have a camera truck. Since fiscal year 2014, we've also been adding positions. We've added a total of 10 positions to the wastewater collection department in anticipation of needing more bodies to get some of this work done. So we currently have 27 authorized positions, 22 of which are filled. We have 5 vacancies, but we are actively working to fill those vacancies. This year, we've also developed pilot programs for root control and sewer cleaning and inspection services. So we are evaluating companies on this small scale pilot program basis, but evaluating to see how we might be able to use their services going forward during the course of the consent decree. And then, of course, earlier this year, that we've completed a rate study so that we could look at the cash requirements for both operational expenses and the capital outlay, which obviously includes the capital projects that may be coming out of this consent decree. So we've evaluated that, and as you recall, we did have some recommended rate increases to both the water rates and the sewer rates, which took effect October 1. So that we're building up some cash in anticipation for needing it to complete these projects. And then once we actually start getting into this consent decree, we'll be funding everything through a combination of the cash that we generate through the water bills as well as through the sale of bonds. And that includes both the condition and capacity assessment work that, we'll be contracting out. We've already contracted with one firm to start updating the hydraulic model, and they are also doing some survey work and evaluating the manholes for us. We'll be contracting out some TV inspection work to get the condition assessments done. And then as well, we'll be paying for the capital projects, mostly through the sale of bonds, but also potentially with cash through the water bills. And of course, we've had a long-standing history of doing periodic rate studies, and we intend to continue that to make sure that we're always staying on track with our cash needs to pay for this work. So we anticipate doing rate studies a minimum of every 4 to 5 years, which is the schedule we've always done them on. We could potentially be looking at rate studies every 1 to 2 years if it looks like we're going to need to start generating extra cash. So, having said all that, this program will provide some benefits to Tyler Water Utilities. What it's going to give us is a written, comprehensive procedures manual. It's going to dictate to us some really good methodologies for operating and maintaining our sewer system. It's going to ensure that we are continually training our staff in the way to properly respond to sewer overflows. It's going to allow us to be more proactive rather than reactive to these sewer issues so that we can identify items that need to be repaired before they get to the point of breaking and causing an overflow. It's going to allow us to be able to clean the blockages from the mains before they result in this overflow. And it's going to help us integrate our operations budget, our capital budget, so that we have a better control over our CIP program. That's all I have for you today.
Any questions of Lisa?
Any questions?
No, these are comments I'll make later after all the presentations.
That was a great presentation.
That was a great
Yeah, it was.
presentation.
That's good.
And I want to say that you have been involved in this process the entire time, and you have stayed with it, and you have helped create a good outcome for the city through your many years of dedication on this issue. So I appreciate that. In very good detail, and I know you're very detail-oriented, and we appreciate that. If Nani, you got a question?
I just want to say,
Yeah.
thank you for the presentation, and you gave us a lot of good information here. But as a taxpayer and concerned about the people in the district, I know the number one question that we're going to get is, how will this affect my drinking water?
It should have no effect on your drinking water system at all. Again,
And that's a good point. I mean, this
Yep.
is dealing solely with the collection system, the 700 miles of line collection. The EPA action has nothing to do with our wastewater treatment plants, and has nothing to do with our water system. So, yeah, thank you for bringing that up so that we can make sure that that is clear to the general public, is that
And-
this has only to do with that collection system itself for the wastewater system.
Right, and one other thing I'll bring up with that as well, though, at this time, is that we have not had any questions on health and safety.
Okay, great.
That has not been a discussion point with the EPA lawsuit people, and it hasn't been identified by our staff in any fashion. So that's not been the issue. Any more questions?
I'll make one comment.
Okay.
Great presentation. I do see benefits. We've got to correct the deficiencies that we've got. And this is almost like the deal with the streets, where you rank the streets and you start fixing the streets based on their grade. So this is the same thing with the pipe. This is something that we've just got to do. And when you find out exactly what you have, where you have it, and how big it is, and you do the modeling, it really is going to help us going forward to repair the things that need to be repaired. So, good presentation.
I think that, yeah, we've all learned way more about wastewater pipes than I ever expected to learn. But what I would say is through this whole process, and I too have been involved with this since day one on my time here as a councilman, and just to highlight the fact that we had these pieces in place, these were things we were doing, and they have admitted that through the process. And even to some quotes from their own book, and this is part of our press release and our FAQs, but the EPA itself states that even an exemplary system that's run to the best of its ability has these discharges. So I always find it funny when they come in and say they want to help us eliminate them, and then they turn around and make the statement in their own documents that that is not achievable. That being said, as always, we're very proud of how y'all run y'all's operation and the foundation that we have there, and we're doing this and moving forward.
Great, thank you. And any more comments or questions? If not, we'll move to the next. Well, I have a card also on this. Jim Matthews, would you come forward? Thank you, Lisa. Ed, would you like to introduce?
I'm
Jim?
glad to introduce
Why don't you
Mr.
do that?
Matthews. And so, yeah, Mr. Matthews primarily has been a voice to you over the box during the executive sessions, and so.
Yes, for many,
it's kinda
many
like
years.
Charlie's Angels, I
Many
guess y'all being
years.
the angels and he being Charlie. But with this.
Well, let's don't use silly
Angels.
metaphors right now or anything.
Let's go.
Let's not do that.
This is for many of y'all maybe an opportunity to meet Mr. Matthews that you haven't before. And so Jim Matthews has been our attorney on this case during the past, 9 years from now. Maybe you came in a little bit after we got started.
2011, yeah.
Yeah, so it has been, he has been the one working on this before with us. He has done a number of cases related to these type of issues. He's very much an expert in this state related to the EPA, working on these type of negotiations regarding the EPA and TCEQ. And so it's a privilege for us to be able to have him, to work with him on this. And so he'll talk to y'all a bit today about just the consent decree, and just some of the issues from the legal component of it.
Well, first of all, I'd like to commend Lisa. She did an excellent job of laying out what's in the consent decree and how you're responding to the consent decree. What I would like to do is just take a moment to put this into context so you know how you fit into the EPA scheme in this program and how you fit in with regard to other cities. I'd like to go back to, well, first of all, the observation that even exemplary cities have wastewater overflows. EPA has done estimates, and they estimate that there are 75,000 overflows of collection systems that happen every single year in this country. And so it's not something that's easy to control. Back in 2001, EPA attempted to adopt a rule that would establish standards for operation and maintenance of wastewater systems. And this rule would have been applicable to every wastewater system operated in the country, whether it was connected to a sewer plant directly or through contract with a larger enterprise like North Texas or Trinity River Authority. Because at the time, those kinds of rules had to be reviewed by the Office of Management of Budget at the White House, the rule was sent to the White House for review. And they obviously are looking at cost benefits and other factors in terms of federal rulemaking. The White House declined to go along with EPA in adopting this rule. And so they were unable to establish their definition of the standards that were applicable to all these systems. It didn't take too long, though, before EPA came back with another approach. In 2005, EPA adopted a guidance document. That's something solely put out by the agency. It doesn't have to go through OMB review. And this is a general manual that explains how to do one of these CMOM programs that Lisa described. The guidance document itself acknowledges it's not a rule and it's not regulatory, but it states that it's to be used by permitting authorities such as the state and the federal government where appropriate for recommendations for how to properly operate and maintain a system. Shortly after 2005, when they put out this guidance document, they began to initiate a strategy for how to implement the guidance document. And the strategy was that the Justice Department would call up a city, usually the city attorney, and advise them that their client, the EPA, had requested that they sue that city for Clean Water Act violations, to which they could be subject at that time up to $37,000 per day and per incident of violation, but that their client wanted to first negotiate a package, a consent decree, and be able to settle this all at one time. And they have proceeded to implement that strategy around the country. In your area, the city of Freeport has entered into a consent decree. Fort Smith, Arkansas has a consent decree. San Antonio, Texas has one. Corpus is currently negotiating one. And so they are going about the process of implementing their CMOM program under the threat of litigation. That's what happened to Tyler in 2009. Your city attorney got a call from the Justice Department saying just what I described, that they wanted to, that they've been asked to sue you under the Clean Water Act, but they wanted to negotiate a settlement. Tyler said yes, they would negotiate. The first 5 years of those negotiations up to 2014 was a one-way street of Tyler providing information to the EPA about its system. They wanted budgets, they wanted master plans, they wanted cleaning summaries of how often you clean your pipes. At one time, we gave them every single work order that was initiated by the Tyler Water Utilities for its wastewater system over a 5-year period of time. There were 3 boxes that I submit to you probably weighed 50 to 60 pounds. It got transmitted to Dallas and promptly got lost, but they eventually found them and conducted a review of those documents. In 2013, EPA hired a contractor, an engineering firm out of Colorado, to assist them in negotiating this consent decree. So they've been receiving information from Tyler for all of this period of time, and then he went out and hired a contractor to help them fashion this into a consent decree. Finally, in September of 2014, 5 years after we had started providing information to EPA, we were given a draft of a consent decree. And from my review of that, it was a one-size-fits-all consent decree that really didn't take into consideration factors that are unique to Tyler. And so we have, over the last 2 years, worked hard to negotiate the language of that consent decree so that it is tailored specifically to Tyler's system and its needs and its situation here. And Lisa's laid out in good detail. I won't go through it again, but she's laid out in detail the components of the consent decree. At this point, I'm able to recommend to you that we enter the consent decree because I think it's been tailored in such a way that it's going to allow you to implement upgrades and improvements to your system that will benefit the city and its citizens. And so with that, I'll pause and see if you have any questions.
I just wanted to say thanks. We've been in lots and lots and lots of meetings, and you have assisted us in negotiation that I mean, we've got things that were concessions from them that I never expected to get, and I know a lot of that is owed to you and your work there and our legal. I know that that was a joint venture and a lot of work, and I'm proud of what y'all were able to accomplish there. Even though I'm not happy with the situation itself. So.
All right.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, I have some. Ed, do you have something to say?
No, I was just making sure there was anything else before we kind of wrap up our part of the presentation.
No, I don't. Jim, you can stay up there if you want, and they might end up being questions. One thing I would like to say, this council has made a significant part of our agenda is working on infrastructure in this community. We have addressed streets, we've addressed water issues, now wastewater issues, stormwater, drainage issues. Infrastructure is a large component of what is important to us. Because we don't want to leave the city for somebody else to do the upgrades to our infrastructure. And we've made a great commitment to that, and it has been since 2014 that we have been enhancing the wastewater staff and making commitments on infrastructure capital improvement items going forward. And this year we did, in August 2016, we had a report that was very detailed, about $47 million worth of upgrades to water and wastewater systems that are going to be paid for in 5 years. Every penny of that, $47 million, is required by the TCEQ and the EPA. And I'm going to come back to them in just a minute. But what I would like to say is that we are going to be in a situation about 2/3 is going to be paid with cash. And that's really what we attempt to do in the city of Tyler, is to pay cash for infrastructure as much as possible. We've had increase in water and sewer rates, but that means we have money to put back into the system. And so about 2/3 on cash, and then we'll have 1/3 that we'll do on bond indebtedness. But basically what we're doing, we have $66 million of water revenue bonds right now. And so the amount of principal we pay down, we'll add back that principal amount. And so we'll stay very close to the current bond indebtedness for water. I mean, for these improvements to wastewater. And it was quite the, Jim, you weren't there, but it was quite the contrast. And when someone, I think Mark Watley asked the guy, how do we stack up to everybody else on the cash in the system to do improvements? And he said, generally, it's flipped. 2/3 to 70% of repairs in most cities are done by bond indebtedness, and about 1/3 in cash. So we're in a good cash situation to deal with these issues. Now, I just stated $47 million of what we're going to be doing in the next 5 years is TCEQ and EPA. One thing that I have found during this process to be offensive as a mayor of a community is that the TCEQ and the EPA on this issue has done their best to make sure they're threatening a community with a lawsuit. And then they are extracting fees from us to go towards whatever budget they may have. Well, this needs to be a situation where we could work with the EPA and the TCEQ. There can be discussions without threatening lawsuits. And number two, they are not doing anything to invest in our community. They are extracting money from the community that we should be using on the system. And that offends me. I want regulation in government to be something that they are assisting cities instead of forcing cities to do things. And so I think this has been offensive for me the last 6.5 years that I have been around this house. And but I am not going to take away from the fact that this council is going to face infrastructure improvements that we need to make in this system. We've committed to it in every other regard in the community, so we're going to stand up and do this on the wastewater system as well. So the outcomes are going to be good. The work that you have done over the last 6.5 years, I've been here to make sure that this document reflects the city of Tyler. When they first came, you're correct, it was one size fit all. They didn't even know anything about us, okay? But we were able to get this document to something that reflects the city and the needs that we need to do, that we need to invest in the wastewater system. So the outcome, while the process, I feel is flawed, the way that they have approached our community, I think the outcome that we were able to do with staff and your help, and our legal staff and you and outside consultants we have is a best practices, the best possible outcome that could ever occur in this situation. And Jim, I really appreciate your help
Thank you, Mayor.
on this project. Is there any other comments?
Mayor, just to add to that, for the general public, we will have on our website and social media sites copies of the press release, frequently asked questions, and consent decree for any and all who may want to see further information on this. The frequently asked questions is very detailed and provides quite a bit of information that people may have if they want to learn more about what does this mean to them and to the community.
Mayor, if it's in order,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion that the city of Tyler enter into a consent decree with the U.S. EPA.
Okay. I have a motion. Do I have a
Second.
second? I have a second by Councilman Nix. Any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much.